Well, I knew that when I left, the program was in good shape. I remember Ralph Lee telling me that he understood why I was leaving, but he said you're leaving a 25 win team, and sure enough, they went 25-4. I think that next year. So I felt good from a personal standpoint that I wasn't jumping ship and leaving the cupboard bare. But on the other hand, I wish I had that decision to do over again because I never would have left.
Welcome into the Xavier Basketball 100 Years podcast brought to you by Heartland Bank. I, Brad Redford, will be your host as we relive some of the greatest Xavier Hoops moments of the last 100 years. New interviews will be made public each week.
What about
and enjoy this conversation
with
former Xavier head coach Bob Staak.
Travel may be a little bit different now than it was during your time at Xavier, but do you have any memories of traveling that kind of stand out to you?
Yeah, well, two stories. One, I think it was my first year. We played our first two games at home, and then we played in the Indiana Classic in Bloomington. And I had to play Indiana, who were ranked number one in the country. It was Isaiah Thomas's freshman year. And, we played them tough for a half, lost, played Seton Hall in the consolation game, and had a chance to win it and kind of just let it slip. And we lost right at the end. And I was pissed off. And I said, everybody's on the bus at 9 o'clock tomorrow morning when we're heading back to Cincinnati. So I'm on the bus. It's about a couple minutes before 9. And we have two players that are not on the bus yet. And I looked at my watch, and when the hour struck 9, I said to the bus driver, "Let's go." And I'm sitting in the first seat, and I look in the rearview mirror, and I see two guys, both of them seniors, running with their baggage, their suitcases. They're running after the bus. And if I would have left them. Terry Koppler didn't say, "Bob, how are they going to get home?" So I said, "Well, that would be a problem." So I said, "Oh, stop the bus." And they got on the bus, and I gave them several choice words from the time they got from the front of the bus to the back of the bus to their seats. And then we went home to Cincinnati in complete silence. So that was one little story. I gave you two more. Another one was the players called it Moorhead Monday, and we played at Moorhead State, and we didn't do anything that we had practiced. We didn't play hard. We went with the damn. So the next day, I had the whole team out. It was a Sunday. Had a whole team out to my house for a cookout or dinner or what have you, and I didn't say a whole lot. And then we ran the next day at practice without a ball for about 2 hours. Oh. And they still ask Gary Matz about Moorhead Monday.
All right, I definitely will.
Yeah. One more. We're playing at Pittsburgh, and it was, I'm trying to think, there was a rapper who was staying in the same hotel. And he's from Long Island City. And Richie Harris, who's from Long Island City, and Victor Fleming, both knew the guy. And so he's all excited. We had it like 11 o'clock curfew. And about 12 o'clock at night, I get a knock on my suite door. And I answer the door, and standing there is Richie Harris, Walt McBride, and Ralph Lee. Oh. And Bootsy Collins, I think the guy's name was. And they knocked on the wrong suite. They were looking for the rapper. And I told them, you better get your asses back in the room. And if we don't win this game tomorrow, there's going to be hell to pay.
All right.
So the next morning, get up. We're ready to go to shoot around. And I get on the elevator, and goes to the next floor. The elevator door is open, and who's there joking, getting ready to get on the elevator, but Ralph, Walt, and Richie. And they had to get in the elevator and ride with me down. and it must have been the longest, about eight floor ride they've ever been on. But we did win the game, so
well,
that was a good deal.
If it would have ended in a loss, it would have ended up a lot worse for those guys. I'm
they
sure
would
of
have been.
that. Okay, so like, and during that time, like, were you pissed off all day and the days after, or did you go back in your hotel room and laugh?
No, I would let it. I would let it stay with me for a while, unfortunately.
Okay, all right.
But until the next day, and then I'd obviously have to get ready for the next practice, the next game, or whatever it might be. So
Yeah.
I recovered.
Come on over to Heartland.
Now, to run a successful business, you need to develop a strong relationship with your accountant, your attorney, and most importantly, your community banker. If you find it hard to get advice from your bank, maybe it's time to consider Heartland. I'm Scott McComb, CEO. Come on over to Heartland, where banking really feels good.
Where banking feels good.
Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
Okay, so be sure to check out Heartland Bank right after this 100 Years podcast interview. All right, well, I'll get off topic there. Well, let's take you back in time a little bit to your Xavier career. Let's go all the way back to 1979 and the interview with Dr. Bill Daly, who many say that the two of you together really had the vision for Xavier basketball and where it could go. 5 years before 79, Xavier dropped football, and there was discussion about moving the basketball program all the way down to Division III. So kind of take me back to that interview and just how you guys put that vision together and, obviously did such a great job during your tenure.
Well, Bill Daly, we had some great conversations prior to the interview, during the interview process, and then afterwards. And we were pretty much on the same page with regard to what direction we thought the program would go. To be perfectly honest, I wasn't aware of anything with regard to the possibility of dropping to Division III until after I got there. Had I known that, I might not have taken the job. But the thing is that I had great cooperation by a number of people, by the administration. They pretty much didn't give a open checkbook to what we're going to try to do, but they increased funds as far as recruiting is concerned, budget, et cetera. And we were able to move forward. We improved the schedule as we moved along. We obviously being in the Midwestern City Conference at that time really helped because we had something to play for other than just an independent schedule like they had in the past. But and then a few years down the line, we were able to move games to the Cincinnati Gardens where we had very good success and were able to increase the crowds. And then, as time moved along, obviously with the Cintas Center, which I think is just a tremendous arena. So things have kind of like gone from back in the planning stages when I first got there to executing some, a game plan, and things have progressed to a point where I think Xavier is one of the best programs, certainly in the Big East, and certainly can be considered a national contender now.
Yeah, and do you remember the moment when you were offered the job? Do you remember that conversation? Was that in person or over the phone? And maybe just the level of excitement that you had? Based on kind of what I read, that was your first head coaching position. So just, how you approached that, how excited you were, and how excited you were to get that program started with your leadership.
Well, I can't remember the specific time I was offered. I'm sure I was offered over the phone. But to be honest with you, we were right in the middle of the end of our Ivy League season at Penn. And we had clinched the Ivy League championship, and we were going to go to the NCAA. So I didn't want anything to be announced until after we finished the NCAA tournament. So I was much more involved in what we were doing at Penn at the time. And that was the year we went to the 1979 Final Four. So from the time I was offered the job and unofficially accepted it till the time I actually was announced was probably about 3 or 4 weeks. So it was, in my mind, I had other things I had to do, but in the back of my mind, I certainly was was planning as to what I want to do with staff and what some of the things that I might want to do in terms of recruiting and so forth. But being an important time for any team to get into the NCAA tournament, that was much my focus at that point.
Yeah, the 1983 team that led to some legitimate postseason success. Trip to the NCAA tournament, some big time players on that roster with Jeff Jenkins, Victor Fleming, Dexter Bailey, Ralph Lee, Walt McBride. Can you talk to me about that team and how they were able to kind of get over that hurdle?
Well, it was our full complement of recruited players, and I think that was Tony Hicks' senior year, which is he was one of the first class that we recruited when I first got there, and we had Steve Wolf, who was transferred from NC State, and as you mentioned, Victor and Dexter and Jeff and Ralph and Walt. And, we had great depth. We had some people that could score the ball. And we were able to do some things defensive that I wanted to do, and they were a team that totally bought in, and I think that was the turning point. That we had all our guys that we had recruited. We had established, over a 4-year period or so that, how we wanted to play, what were the things we were going to demand of the players, the expectation and the accountability that we wanted of the players. And to all their guys' credit, they all bought in, and we worked very well as a team, and had a great run there at the end of the season. We were able to beat Loyola in the finals of the tournament in Evansville and get the bid to the NCAA.
Well, Steve Wolf is going to be mad that I didn't bring him up in the first round of talking about players. So I have to.
Well, you know something, I understand that, and I'm in your defense. I'm sorry if I put any undue pressure on you by bringing his name up instead of you.
No, not at all. Steve's just going to give me crap for that. That's my only thing, because I'm going to make Steve listen to this, and then he's going to call me. He's going to get mad at me like he didn't bring it up. So you talk about your team buying in, and you hear a lot of coaches say that, like the team bought in, they bought in. Was there a moment, was there a guy that you knew that this team was ready for postseason success? They were one unit. That's the biggest challenge with any team, regardless of talent, is the chemistry there, because once you start playing with teams that are talented, it's 1-possession, 2-possession games. That's going to make the difference. And it's the teams that buy in and understand each other that ultimately end up having that success. So do you remember any moment or any game that really stands out to you?
Off the top of my head, I think this game, although we lost it, might have been one that kind of recommitted a lot of players and solidified what we were doing. We played at Loyola Chicago in February, and coming from the shoot-around during the day at the day of the game, we're in a meeting in my suite, and my mother called, said that my father was ill, and it didn't look good. And between the meeting and game time, my father had passed, and I didn't say anything to any of the players until after the game. And they just played, an outstanding game with great passion. And it just seemed to me that, my father kind of, his guiding hand was helping them along. After the game, we really banded together when I told them about my father's passing. The players were great, and I think we really became a family then. And I think that was kind of the thing that turned everything around as far as continuing with the rest of the season and making it to the NCAA tournament.
Who on that team was really the leader on the floor? The guy in those moments when they maybe can't hear the coaching staff in the second half. Who was the guy that really brought the team together? And maybe a guy that no matter what team you coached on, you'd love to have him as that kind of coach on the floor.
Well, there was two guys. One was John Shimko, and he was no matter from the day he got there as a freshman, he just had he came from a winning program, and in high school, and he just had a confidence in him and a workmanlike attitude that carried over to many others. And he was, even when he was a freshman or a sophomore, he spoke up and he demanded accountability. The other guy, as a freshman, was the same way, and that was Ralph Lake, who was more like the coach on the floor because he was the point guard. We had a great relationship in terms of communication, and he knew what I wanted, and he conveyed that to players, and really kept a tight rein on what we were trying to do, and selling it and pushing it on the rest of his teammates.
You hear the idea of like there's born leaders. I kind of believe that to a degree, especially with the basketball team. You have to have a guy with legitimate talent that can lead. But what's in between his ears, I don't know how much you can teach that. Did it take much on your end to push those guys to be in more of a leadership position, or was it kind of something naturally, over time they kind of moved into that role?
Well, I think both John and Ralph were both they just that was their makeup. They had come from programs where that was the role that they played, and they just felt that that was what they wanted to bring to our team, and they did an excellent job as far as that's concerned. And I think it's something that has to be inbred, which with those two it was. Whereas I don't think you could teach somebody or force somebody into being that type of a leader. They either are or they aren't, and that's not to say that not to be a leader would not make you not a good player. But those two guys, kind of had the infectious type of attitude and ability to convey into others and get them to really be a cohesive unit on the floor.
Did you look for that in the recruiting process? I'm always curious at how coaches and scouts, how can they find that out? I mean, I feel like there's one thing in doing an interview with a player or, going to visit him or talking with a coach, and maybe you can ask the right questions to get there. But how do you target that guy? How do you target not just the right guy from a talent perspective, but also a guy that is high IQ, is going to buy into what the coaches are saying and turn into a great teammate?
Well, I think, you try to do as much intel as you can with regard to, finding out from the coach, the high school coach, get a feel for, in a home visit, where the parents are coming from as far as the kid is. And obviously in your relationship with the player, you're going to get a sense of what kind of leader, what kind of player, what kind of attitude, and what he brings to the table. So I think it's all part of the process of getting to know somebody you're recruiting. And back in the day when I was at Xavier and coaching in college, you were able to do that because there really wasn't a limit on number of contacts, by phone and all the stuff that they have now. So it may be a little bit more difficult to do that at this point. And things have changed so much as far as college basketball is concerned, and the people that transfer in and out, and the graduate transfers, and all that type of thing makes it a little bit more difficult, I think, to really get a handle on some of that stuff.
Yeah, I'm sure the personalities, the process is definitely a lot different, and social media has added a whole new aspect, not just for players, but all of humanity in general, and it seems like we don't know how to figure it out. So, all right, we've talked about a lot of good moments, and I'd like to continue to go there, but were there any rough moments in the beginning when you took over the job, your team was struggling early on, where you were like, man, I don't know if this is going to work out. Like, I don't know if I'm going to build this program into a winner, or did you kind of just keep that confidence rolling through even during those difficult moments?
Well, I felt I was always confident, in what I was trying to do in terms of my head coaching philosophy. And the one disappointing thing is we made progress the first year. I think we beat University of Dayton for the first time in a while that first year, and then the second year we won the regular season championship of the MCC and went to the finals of the tournament, lost to Oklahoma City. The next year we had most everybody back, and we were hit with a rash of injuries. So we went from winning 8 games the first year, 12 the second, and we thought we would build on that, and we fell back to winning 8 again because of all the injuries and so forth. And then we went from, when we got everybody back healthy the next year, we went from 8-22 to 22-8. So, it was that one bump in the road that year with the injuries. I remember talking about Steve Wolf. He had a stress fracture of his foot. He missed a large portion of that. And then we had Gary Mass, I believe, had some injury. And so it was Gary Mass was the year before. But we had some injuries and illness and so forth. Eddie Johnson missed the year with pancreatitis. And so we had planned to improve on our 12-win and regular season championship from year 2 to year 3, and it just didn't work out. But we rebounded and got the thing rolling where I thought it would be the next year when we went to the NCAA.
Well, that's why people refer to you as the Godfather, because you just made it work. I don't know if you like that or not, but you're the Godfather of Xavier basketball to a lot of people here.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Did you always kind of feel that commitment from the Xavier fan base? I think that's one thing for me, just being around the program now as long as I have been, and I'm still living in Cincinnati, is just I was always amazed, even during the recruiting process, how committed the fan base was to the team and how much they cared. And I think the same goes for the administration. I wasn't around during the time you were coaching. Did you feel that early on? Is that something that drew you to the job and kind of gave you confidence throughout your time at X?
Well, I think over time, yes. I think I had to do a little bit of educating of some people in the administration with regard to what it takes to get to where they wanted to get with the program. And, there wasn't a fundraising branch really as far as athletics were concerned with basketball. We instituted the All for One Club. And with the cooperation of a lot of alumni around the Cincinnati area, we were able to raise some funds and do some things and really make it a quality first class program. And those things I'll remember. But it wasn't easy because it's something that hadn't been done prior, and times were changing. And having come from the University of Pennsylvania and some other programs where that was already in place, it was a kind of an education process that we had to go through to really sell this to the administration, to some alumni. But once we started to reap some success, the fan base grew. There was always great loyalty from the alumni and the fans of Xavier. So it just a question that it was a bit of dormant at the time. But when we started having some success and doing some of the things we did, people just jumped on the bandwagon, having maybe been on the ride but not really participating.
Yeah.
And then they came right back, and I think it's grown to what it is now.
Yeah, well, you guys were doing all the hard work. Was there a game at the Gardens at home you remember where you had a sellout crowd and you're like, all right, finally we got people excited here again?
Well, actually the first game that we played in Cincinnati Gardens was against St. Louis, and because it was new, because we kind of really hyped it up and so forth and so on. We had almost a capacity crowd. We went from having maybe 3,800 at the field house, and we had I think between 8,000 and 9,000 fans at Cincinnati Gardens for that first game, and we beat St. Louis quite handily, and then we won I think our first 16 games at the Cincinnati Gardens. So all that kind of stimulated interest, got people excited, and so forth. And then when we hosted 2 games in the NIT in '84 and beat Ohio State at home, which was a real big game in terms of boosting our program and giving them the credibility that I think we were all working to get to, and then beating Nebraska before we lost to Michigan. at Michigan by 1 to go to the Final Four of the NIT. I think that whole sequence there was something that really started it going.
Yeah, and you left the program in pretty good hands. When you left and went to Wake Forest, did you see the progression of where Xavier could go? Did you feel good about where the program was, where it stood, and obviously the steps that the program's made over years? How did you feel towards the end of your time at Xavier?
Well, I knew that when I left, the program was in good shape. I remember Ralph Lee telling me that he understood why I was leaving, but he said you're leaving a 25-win team, and sure enough, they went 25-4. I think that next year. Mm-hmm. So I felt good from a personal standpoint that I wasn't jumping ship and leaving the cupboard bare. But on the other hand, I wish I had that decision to do over again because I never would have left, mm-hmm. and I might still be there now. So, it's you make decisions that sometimes work, sometimes they don't. But I wouldn't trade my experience at Xavier, and I wish I had to make the decision again, and I would have stayed.
Well, it's always a discussion with the fan base of, why doesn't a coach stay? And I think a lot of people looking at Chris Mack, who I played for, they felt like he was that Xavier lifer, guy from Cincinnati, played at Xavier, ultimately ended up going to Louisville. You hate to hear that term stepping stone job, which I don't think, coaches think that way, by any means about Xavier. But what do you think it would take for a coach to stay at Xavier through the long term? Maybe Travis Steele is that guy. But it's been such an incredible lineage of coaches. But, what's it going to take to have a guy maybe stay here for the long term?
Well, I don't want to be crass, but part of the reason is it's not about the money. It's only about the money. Mm-hmm. And some of these programs can offer, tremendous packages in some of these bigger leagues. When I say bigger, at that time when I was there, it was the Midwestern City Conference and it was the ACC. And, the Big East is one of the best basketball conferences, I think, in the country. But there are other places like a Louisville, like in Arizona, that have, attracted people for one reason or another, whether it be wanting to play at the highest level against, some of the best competition or the best competition as you perceive it. And, but, a lot's to be said for being happy. And if you're happy at a place, you should give it serious thought about staying. And again, if I had, because I was very happy at Xavier, if I had to redo it, I would do that. I think there may be a coach or two that has done the same thing that probably feels the same way.
And then as far as the Big East that Xavier is in right now, I mean, I've thoroughly enjoyed it as a basketball fan. As a guy who used to train players after school for a number of years, and just watching the Big East and the teams that are coming into the Cintas Center week in and week out during the regular season is just phenomenal. And a lot of the Xavier fans are going to hate me for this, but Villanova is probably my favorite team to watch. So maybe outside of Xavier, who else in the Big East? Are there any teams, the way that they play, that you really enjoy watching?
Yeah, my alma mater, UConn, who's going to be joining the Big East this year again, or rejoining it, I should say. And having been in Philadelphia in the Big Five, I've always enjoyed watching Villanova. And Rolly Massimino was a very good friend of mine. I coached his son Tommy as a freshman at Penn, and I have great respect for Jay Wright and the job that he does. So those are two teams in particular that I enjoy, watching play in addition to Xavier.
So I've been trying to get in touch with Jay Wright, not because I'd love to do an interview with him, but I'm just trying to figure out where he shops and gets all his suits from, because this guy's always dressed to the nines, man. He's not just an incredible coach, man. He's got the best dress staff, I think, in the country.
Well, you talk about his contract, I think more than helps him with his wardrobe. Trust me.
It can service that, right?
Yes.
All right, so I want to just get to your playing career a little bit as well. I didn't see you play. What was your style of game like?
When I was a player?
Yes.
You were much too young, Brad, to see me play when I was playing.
Well, that's what I got to ask you. I was looking it up. I was trying to find game tape, and I couldn't find it. I was getting dodged everywhere I was going.
Yeah. Yeah, I was a deep shooter. You know, there wasn't a 3-point line when I was playing. Had there been, I would have scored quite a few more points because a lot of the shots that I took were from well beyond the 3-point line. But I was heavily recruited out of high school, and I signed with St. John's my freshman year, and I averaged 15 points a game on the freshman team before freshman eligible, and then transferred to UConn for a number of reasons. And then when I left there, I was fourth all-time league scorer, and went from there. I signed a contract with the Pittsburgh Condors of the ABA. Played there for what I call as a cup of coffee, and then played some in New York State Professional League for a while, and then I gave up playing after I coached a year in high school and got into the college game, and that was it. So you know, I'd always played against people that were older than I was, better than I was when I was a kid. And then I used to, having grown up right around about 40 minutes outside New York City, I would go down to New York City to play in the playgrounds there. In Stamford, Connecticut, and Norwalk, Connecticut, New Haven, Connecticut, Bridgeport. I used to travel around and play in all kinds of tournaments and summer leagues, and anytime I could get a pickup game at a place where there were better players, that's what I did. Unfortunately, I don't know how many people do that on their own anymore. It's more this AAU stuff and these travel teams and so forth. So I think people get to play against the competition that I did that I had to seek out program these traveling teams.
Yeah, that's where I picked up my love for the game, was going out and playing pickup. And I grew up in a small town in Michigan, so you know there weren't that many talented players that I could play with. So I would find courts in Saginaw and Flint. Occasionally we'd go down to Detroit when my dad would have work down there, and that was where, you know, I grew my love for the game. You don't see that as much anymore with these guys. I mean, AAU helped me out a lot, you know, getting connected with the right people to help get me to the college level. But, yeah, I used to play pickup nonstop. And I remember one time at Xavier, I felt like I was getting, I don't know if burnout's the right word, but I had a trip to New York. I ended up missing my flight, and I went down and played a pickup game. I played from probably 5 p.m. to about midnight, and it just like reignited my love for the game of basketball. So I always say to any player that's going through a little bit of a burnout stage, go play pickup, go have fun playing, and then kind of get back to what you're doing. I have a selfish question for you because I saw that you coached with Chuck Daly. Is that correct?
Yes.
So I'm a huge Pistons fan. My dad was a reporter in Detroit during the Bad Boys era. I've watched a million Piston documentaries. I just have to ask you about Chuck Daly, if you got any great stories about him.
Well, Chuck was one of my closest friends, and also being my boss when I worked for him for 2.5 years at Penn, and then stayed close with him. He offered me a job twice in the NBA. Once when he first went to Cleveland. But he didn't want to bring me there then because he said he wasn't sure how long he was going to be there. And I think he was there something like 93 days or something. So, and then he offered me a job with the Pistons, and we had just, my son was just born. So there was a time where I just couldn't take the job. So, you know, he was one of the most organized guys I've ever been around. I learned a great deal. I think a lot of things in terms of the organization of a program that I learned from him, I brought to Xavier and instituted in our own program. But I'll never forget, you know, two stories. When I first got there, I said, well, Chuck, you know, what time do you want me to come to the office? He says, well, I get in around 9, and I just have one rule, and that's beat me in. And so I got to the office about 4 minutes after 9 one morning because of traffic coming from New Jersey, and he was in. And I walked in 4 minutes after 9, and he said, "Good afternoon." So that kind of led me that, I knew what the hell I had to do. And then another story, in the Ivy League at the time, there was obviously very tough admission standards. And you didn't have scholarships. It was financial aid based on need, where you also had work study and loan involved in your whatever scholarship you would get. And going from a scholarship school, I was an assistant at UConn and William and Mary, where we gave full scholarships. Going from that situation to a financial aid based on need situation, there's a whole lot of stuff you gotta do. Parents gotta have confidential statements, this, that, and the other. And I was on the job about a week and a half or so, 2 weeks, and Chuck called me in the office and said, "How's it going?" I said, "It's going good." I said, "But Chuck, there's so much stuff you gotta learn. It's almost like you don't have enough time in the day." He said, "Well, get in earlier." So that was another indication as to how we did. And he brought the Duke philosophy to Boston College when he went there as the head coach, and then to Penn. And there was another Duke guy that was the athletic director at the time at Penn. It was Fred Schaefer, who was also a Duke assistant. Later went to become the head coach at UConn and recruited me out of high school. So there was very much a business, almost like an IBM type of atmosphere in the program in terms of organization. And, those are the things that I learned from Chuck.
All right, for the hoops junkies out there like myself, talk about maybe some of the principles that you brought to Xavier. I mean, you mentioned you brought maybe some philosophies of Chuck Daly, but as far as X's and O's, the way that you operated, can you give me a glimpse into maybe what a practice was like with you, or what you were consistently kind of preaching to the team?
Well, I had two kind of basic rules or principles that I wanted the players to do, and that's number one is play hard, and number two is have fun, and that's what we used to try to do at practice. We were gonna practice hard, we were gonna play hard, and we were gonna have fun, and we're gonna play together. And those are the things from an X and O or a philosophical standpoint, from a pure basketball sense. That's what we try to get across, and I think we did. And we wanted our players to have, operate in a first-class manner and present themselves in a first-class manner. I'll never forget when I first got to Xavier, we had a senior by the name of Keith Walker, who was a very good point guard. And I walked by the gym one day. They were playing pickup in the gym prior to the start of the season, and he had these jeans on that were frayed at about the knee, and then the front of them was slit right up almost to his groin. And I mean, he looked like a ragamuffin. And I said, "Keith," I said, what the hell is this?" He says, "Well, I don't have any shorts." So I said to Terry Koppler, our trainer and equipment manager, I said, "Terry, get him a pair of shorts." I said, "I don't want to see you in the gym representing our program dressed like that again. And if you are, you're not going to be with us very long." And it never happened again. And we pretty much got that principle across to everybody else. And that's what we did. We would dress in a first-class manner and act in a first-class manner. We traveled in a first-class manner. And we wanted our players to take pride in that.
All right. Well, hey, Coach, thanks so much for your time. I wish we could have a shooting contest with each other. I do wish that. I don't shoot as much as I used to. I'd imagine you probably don't either. But I wish we could go back in time and do a shooting contest at some level. If there was anything I could ever do as a player, it was at least shoot the ball. So I don't know.
Right,
you might have had me beat. I don't know.
No. Let's correct that. It's not might have had you beat. All right. All I would do is tell you that when you came to that shooting contest, bring your wallet.
You were going to get in my head. I like that.
Oh, no, it's not quite. It's all over. Tell me.
I will.
You know what I used to tell the guys I play with? If you want an assist, pass me the ball.
That's pretty good.
So,
I never used that line. Mine was why pass when you can shoot. I called it the why plan.
I understand. Well, if I didn't have the ball, I'd throw up my sneakers.
Yeah. Well, during my time, I'd only touch it so many times. So when I get it, for me, it was like a hot potato to the rim.
Well, my teammates made sure that I got to hold the ball a significant amount of time. I'll tell you.
Yeah, there you go. Well, hey, thanks for jumping on. I know we tried to connect last week. It was on me. I'm not a technical guy. I was using a new software. It wasn't coming through. We got it fixed up. So thanks so much for your time. Xavier,
no problem.
Xavier Nation still loves you, and they're definitely going to love some of the stories that you shared here. So, best of luck with everything you got going on.
I appreciate it.
And I hope the Miami Heat continue to play well.
Thank you very much, Brad.
Okay, see you, Coach.
Enjoy being with you.
All right, I just want to thank everybody for listening to this podcast. And if you enjoyed it, please leave a review and keep tuning in to more Xavier Basketball 100 Years podcast interviews.
Brown against Burton. Brown starting his dribble. He moves in, he pops up, he shoots. Scores! Lenny Brown! Xavier wins it! The Muskies win it! 71-69! And the UC Bearcats are #1 in the country, #2 in their own city!